You are a cultural pioneer, or as I'd like to say, a culture-neer. You're daring to go where others aren't willing to go. The unknown doesn't scare you, it intrigues you. You're not satisfied with the status quo. Business as usual is not in your DNA. You're done with doing the same thing and expecting a different result. You're an explorer at heart and a trendsetter by nature. You were born with purpose, called to lead, destined to make a difference. You are a culture-neer. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Culture-neer podcast. I'm your host, Terry Gwaltney. Our guest today is Chance Summers. He's the CEO of 1689 Cigars. Specializes obviously in cigars, but I mean, it's 1689 Armory, 1689 Coffee, 1689 Distillery, 1689 Brewery. We're going to figure out what all this 1689 is about before we get off here today. But Chance, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, really excited about this. I know you just got back from Washington, so you're probably dragging a little bit. So how was your trip to D.C.?
It was great. Probably got about 15 hours of sleep in 5 days, so I'm still rolling though.
That's awesome. I seen where you rolled out a new cigar while you were out there. Tell us a little bit about that before we get going. I just thought that was neat.
Yeah, so we did Trump's inauguration cigar. You can look it up at trumpcigars.us, and we handed a lot of them out to the Republicans that were there at the galas and the balls that we were at, and then met with a lot of them in the cigar lounges and had a good time. Made some really good contacts, and then going to get into some of the cigar lounges up there just because of the Trump cigar.
Well, that's awesome. Listen, I know you're busy. You're a serial entrepreneur. I want the audience to be able to hear all about that today as we talk about culture and just business and, really how you can use business to enrich, the lives of the people that you're leading, working with, and the communities that you're serving in. I know we're going to get into all that, but let's get to know you just a little bit better as an individual before we dive into all your entrepreneurial endeavors, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm assuming you're married?
Yeah, married 11 years.
Awesome. How'd you guys meet?
Bible college.
Yeah.
Awesome. I was the bad boy, and she was just drawn to me like a gnat to a light.
So she was your missionary. That's awesome. Any kids yet?
One.
Awesome. How old?
6 months and 3 days.
Oh, wow. There's a life changer. Your life's really about to change.
It is.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Talk to us a little bit about who influenced you the most as you were growing up.
Honestly, I didn't really have too many influences. Grew up in a broken home, poor family. And then, honestly, this probably sounds really odd, but Eminem influenced me the most as I was growing up as a child. And then, not for the best.
Wow. Okay. I didn't see that one coming. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's a curveball. And so I took on that like rebel persona of just being, I don't know, raw and rude and an idiot. And then later on in my life, I was converted to Christianity, became a believer in Christ. And then those rough edges started being chiseled away. And then you get married and your wife really helps you chisel some of those away.
You go from one extreme to the other. This is great.
Yeah.
So yeah. I still got to circle back. There's always something to be learned. What was the greatest lesson your parents ever taught you, even if it was just what not to do?
Well, I guess with my parents, when I was 25, I found out who my real dad was through a random Facebook message on Facebook. So I always held this guy who wasn't my dad to a standard that I shouldn't have. And so for him, it would have been the ability to forgive, deeply forgive open wounds. And then for my mother, it's probably tell the truth, not because she lived that, but because of I've seen what lies and deception does. And that's the harsh reality. I didn't have a good family structure growing up. I didn't have any of that. So, as I've gotten older, cultivating business is one of the great things that I love to do, because I am giving families funds, but also I'm able to influence young men and teach them to love their wives, love their families, pay them well, take care of them. And so, those are two things that I've really, learning to forgive and then learning to tell the truth, even when it's not in vogue.
Does the entrepreneurial gene run in your family, or did it kind of start with you?
I don't know. So my mother was adopted. I never really had much contact with my family. And then the man who I thought was my dad wasn't my dad. So I really don't know. It's one of those things where I remember in my early age when we would meet together. I know my grandpa and my uncles were part of the Italian mafia. So I guess if that's entrepreneurship, then yeah.
Oh, there you go.
So
interesting.
Yeah, I got a crazy story. I don't want to really dive super deep into it, but it's one of those things where if I told you, you probably wouldn't believe me.
Are you about to tell us?
I guess I'll tell you. I was 10 years old. We'd go to the Christmas dinners with my family, and they're all mob bosses. Like my grandpa got arrested for having a massage parlor downtown Indy, and it wasn't a massage parlor.
Yeah.
And then they paid the judge off like $300,000 to get him out of jail, and so like they would tell these stories of throwing people off bridges and doing all these vile things. So as like a young man, I kind of like they were my idols, and so a lot of their influence was very poor. So I grew up really brash or harsh, or my way or the highway, or the masculinity that hurts, the bad traits of masculinity. And so a lot of times the influences I had there were really negative. And so I guess the entrepreneur gene does run in me, and but it's not illegal.
It's not illegal. Would that have been on your maternal side or paternal side? I guess you're maternal because you don't really know on the paternal. Okay.
Mother's side, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's an interesting start to interesting life.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, why did you choose to get into the cigar industry? I mean, sounds like, I guess you could have had a massage parlor, or
probably pays better. That's all under what's going to be tips. No tax on tips now. So, well, I mean, the cigar journey starts like this. I used to play video games professionally. And my wife just thought it was a super effeminate quality of a man get up in the morning, play video games, and get paid to do it, which there are people who do it, and it's good money in that space. But my wife couldn't stand it. So it was one of two things. I end the video game career, or I lose my wife. And so I love my wife, and so she came first. And I'm a social guy. Like video games, why I like them is because you get a team, you would have guys you would talk to nightly, you would discuss business, you would discuss what you're doing as a family, what are your plans, your vacations. So it was more of a social concept. And so my bride, being the sweet person she is, when I committed to that, she bought me a box of Sober Mesa Brule Blues. They're Steve Saka's, probably still one of my favorite cigars, probably because there's a lot of sentiment there. I don't know if the flavor profile is the best now, but she bought those. I started smoking cigars, 12 years ago, and then really enjoyed it. The social atmosphere, the lounges where really men are in there, and they typically have businesses. They'll take you under their wing. They'll educate you. They'll be like a dad to you. And so the cigar industry was kind of the introduction of that. And then about 3.5 years ago, I met a gentleman named Al Gomez. He runs a company called Reform Cigars. Good friend of mine. We partner with him. We sell his cigars. And he was selling cigars for church plants, and I was like, man, that's really interesting. And when I find stuff,
the story
like,
just gets more interesting as we go.
I hyperfixate on it, and so I was like, man, I could get into this. So I brought his cigars stateside. We imported them through Tampa. We did all the legal stuff that you have to do. And then in Kentucky, you don't need a retail license unless you're in Louisville. And so we just started selling cigars online. Well, it got a lot of traction, and I was like, I'm good at branding. I'm good at building things. So I was like, okay, well, we'll build out our brand. And then I started going down the rabbit hole of, well, I got $800 and 100 cigars. What can I turn this into? And that was 3 years ago, and we just sold a portion of our company for quite a bit of money. But the entrepreneur spirit of building a culture where men sit down, talk about faith at that time when Trump wasn't in office, and then business. And so we all sit down, and then proceeds of the cigars are going to church plants in Nicaragua. So I was like, it's a win-win for me. And so I started going, and the business started growing. And so I had to learn how to code websites, learn how to import products. And so I put all my eggs in one basket and said, let's do this. And January 1 to January 1, we had a 10,000% increase in online sales. And we're building our second cigar lounge, Lord willing, in the middle of March. And so there's a growth here in the industry. In 2020, the cigar industry was $13.1 billion in America. 2024, it's $23.1 billion. So men are finding friends in a cigar lounge. And I also think it's one of those things where a lot of times women make everything beautiful. And so like the old spots where men would get together were the pubs, and then women got in control of the pubs. And I'm not saying that in a negative light, but they turned them into clubs. They turned them into something beautiful where a woman would want to go. And the cigar lounges are typically
dark
men. They're dark, they're grungy,
wood.
They smell like smoke. And so it's a revival of true masculinity in America. And there's a lot going on in cigar lounges that you wouldn't expect. I mean, there's young men who come in here who have a chip on their shoulder, and we're able to counsel them. We're able to love on them. We're able to get them plugged into local churches. There's a lot of stuff that we do here that impacts the community over a cigar, because you have a captive audience for 2 hours when you're smoking a cigar.
Interesting. So what's the significance of the year 1689 in so many of your businesses?
Yeah, so we did it because of the cigar world. The cigar world loves numbers. And so we're like, oh, how can we incorporate this in? I was like, maybe I do my birth year. Maybe I do the year we got married. Maybe I do. And so I wanted to have some kind of significance to it. And so 1689 is when the London Baptist Confession of Faith was put together and established. And so every one of our cigar lines have a theme of history or church history. So we have the 1646, which is the Westminster, where you have the Presbyterians. They come from there. The London, you have the Baptists in some side of the non-denominational. And then you have the Savoy, which is the 1656, where you get your Methodist and more of your Pentecostal roots. And so we wanted to be ecumenical without being funny, or like everybody always has like the Christian companies and they have a Jesus fish. And typically when you see that, it's like, they're going to give me good service, but probably their product is not that good. And so we wanted to have a distinct picture, and we wanted to be able to have a great logo, something that's easy to market. And then we also wanted to have the ability to, when young men come into the cigar lounge, well, what does this stand for? Well, it's the 1689 London Baptist Confession. It's an open invitation to share your faith. And so that's why we went that route.
Very intriguing. So we talk about culture, obviously, on the show. The name of it's Culture-neer. I think it's so important, in the organizations that we run. If it's toxic, it's really bad, and it affects you professionally and personally. And when it's super healthy, same thing. Gives you a competitive advantage professionally, and causes you to go home and many times just be a better spouse, be a better parent, just because you have a better outlook on life. What's your definition of culture, if you had to put it in your words?
Well, when we build our culture here, the top is still going to sweep the floors. Like, I still clean the cigar lounge. I have employees that could do that, but it's leadership where they know when I come into work, I'm willing to do everything that they are doing. And so we build a culture like that, but also we take care of our employees. Like if there's, they need something and we have the ability to give it to them, unless it's like enabling them, we will provide what they need. And so when we have events, we'll fly their spouses out with them on their events and their children, and they'll be a part of the events. There is a lot of things that when we build a healthy culture, it's not about just, having fistfuls of cash and filling your barns full of money. It's about actually giving back to a community. And if you want a healthy community, you have to pay your employees well to build a healthy community. And so the culture that we build is probably more of like a servant leadership style. Obviously, you have to have, I get to make the devices or the decisions that are going to impact the company the most. And that responsibility falls on my shoulders. And if I fail, I hurt everybody else around me. But I also we listen to everybody's input. So we have a pretty smooth system when it comes to, I do all the marketing. We have a legal guy, then we have a guy who does all of our warehouse stuff. And if my warehouse guy comes to me and goes, these cigar bands that we're putting on these cigars are horrible, and they take us an extra 3 hours because they don't have glue on them. So he just gave me his complaint. I don't look at him and say, do better. I went and figured out how to get glue already pre-installed on the cigar bands. And now instead of them banding 25 cigars an hour, they can band 150. And so when you listen to your staff and you don't just roll over them with an iron fist, your company tends to grow because they're in that area every day doing their best, and then they run into a hiccup and you can solve the problem, then you do it. If you can't solve the problem, then you have a team meeting and you're like, I really can't solve this problem. I will look to see if there's options, things like that. So we do listen to our staff a lot as well. And we built a culture of, we're a Christian company. So we built a culture of honor, integrity. If somebody sends us a picture of their cigar cracked, we send them a gift card for 2 cigars, not just one, but they got a messed up cigar. That's on us. And they're going to get 2 for that one. And people can abuse that system. Sometimes they do, but we don't care. It's one of those things where you lose sometimes. And so that's our culture. We're all pretty chill here as well. There's not super hyper aggressive cutthroat mentality. It's like, you do your best, you're going to get paid well. If you need trained, we're going to train you. If you need this, we're going to give you this. And so we really want to take care of our people. And at the end of the day, if funds are short, the CEOs are the last ones to get paid. That's how we operate as a company.
Yeah, it's a good example of good servant leadership. So you hit on a lot of that there, but why do you think that a healthy culture is just so crucial for organizational success?
Yeah, so a healthy culture, it brings you to a place to where you can continue to build. When you have something toxic, all you're doing is putting out fires. If you have people who are gossiping or backbiting or slandering one another, or they come to work and they hate each other, it just makes the culture so bad. I ran a Christian day school for 2 years, and I had a policy. If somebody came to me and they were complaining about the other person, unless it was an actual crime, then we'll define that. But if they're complaining about the other person, I'd radio the other person, and that other person would be in my office. And they would both be in there. We would work it out. We're not going to gossip or slander or cut each other down behind our backs. And so, you know what they started doing after I started bringing them to my office? Instead of me calling them to the office, they would go talk it out with each other. And so you have to build this culture that is going to work. And that's where we'll use the term is going to be non-toxic by letting people know when people do things that are wrong, they're going to be addressed. They're not just going to be let go, because what you're doing is you're just setting yourself up for failure. It's just a little lighting of a match, and then all of a sudden there's something nuclear, and you have 5 of your best employees leave and go to another company. And you're like, uh-oh, those guys bring in millions of dollars a year for me. And it's like, how in the world can I keep them? You keep them by keeping an honest culture that doesn't cut each other down. When somebody has success and envy comes up, you spur that person to do better, so the envy doesn't. And then you also can give them incentives. All right, well, here's your incentives. You can do the exact same thing he or she did. And so that's kind of how we try to build a healthy culture around here is we have an issue, we get to the root of it, and we solve it right then and there.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of hit on this too. Retention in this day and age is just as important as recruitment.
Yeah.
And what cultural elements outside of the ones you just mentioned do you think really ensure high retention rates? Because we went through.
Yeah. So
I was just going to say, when we went through COVID, I mean, there was it was like the Great Resignation, and nobody could figure that out. Now, most of the people I think that had good cultures weren't dealing with it at the same level of difficulty, but there were still challenges that they were dealing with. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, that's good. With us, we like to, one or two of our hires is this way. If somebody is a young starting into the industry and they're teachable, they don't know everything, we will hire them and we will coach them. If they show up on time, they get to work, and they have a willing spirit, those are the best employees to hire. And when you have good communication with those employees when they're wanting to move, we had a young man here, his name's Chris, and he was wanting to move, and he let us know, like, hey, 8 months before he was going to move. And I was like, don't move, man. We'll give you a raise. We'll keep you here, and like, we'll invest in you. We'll make sure your family's taken care of. And he decided to stay. And thank God for that, because he's such a help to our company. And so when you're building this kind of culture, retention is that you show that they're valued, and then you also choose somebody who's teachable. I learned this, we were down at a conference called the Workspace Conference, and it's just basically entrepreneurs get together, they have vision, and then you have your breakout sessions, and then you have your main speakers. There's a dude named Andrew, he runs Red Balloon out of Moscow, Idaho, and he got up and he said one of the biggest graces that you can give some of your employees sometimes is to fire them. And like, he told me that, and I was like, wow. So I'm sitting down, I start writing on my iPad, and I was like, all right, I'm going to take this. And then he went through and he said, because if somebody's unteachable, what you're going to do is just run into an unmovable object, and every area of your business suffers. And so, I had to go home, and there was a gentleman that fit everything that Andrew was saying. And it was the best decision that we made for our business, growth-wise and stuff like that. So like, when you build a culture of integrity, a culture of, I call it the Protestant work ethic, you get at it. And so that's our goal, is we hire somebody who's teachable. And then if it's somebody who's later on in their years, we hire them after we do actual research. We call their previous jobs. And we ask their previous jobs, like, did he show up on time? Did he complete the projects that he was given? Or is his resume inflated? And you'll weed out 90% of your bad hires if you do that. And there's always going to be that 10% that are going to just have problems, because it's the human race.
Yeah. Talk to us about how you feel that mission is more important than just money. And I'm assuming, just having talked to you a few times, that's either more important or at least equally important. We have to show profit in business, and we have to keep a good reputation and take care of people. But there's a certain amount of success where it's like, okay, there's got to be more than that. And I think that's where mission comes in. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I'm for like making as much money as possible. But also, when you have we call it mission drift, you're going to be drifting from your goals or your established company. And so the mission drift, it sneaks up on you, because sometimes you're in a good spot, you're making a lot of money, and then you take your eyes off the prize. And that's a dangerous thing, because I truly believe this. Like, think of Elon Musk. He's like, I want to go to Mars. What drives Elon? It's conquest. And so when men don't have like a mission or a goal or something to shoot at, we're much like David on the roof in the Bible, looking down at Bathsheba, leaving his conquest. And so being a part of mission, being able to fund, we have a missionary down in Mexico. We're going to be able to fully fund him in January. And like, that drives me. That makes me want to go out and sell cigars, And then your employees also, that drives them, because they know that there's a young guy down there. He's getting married soon, and we're literally giving him the money to build his house and get married. And so like that drives your employees to work hard because they're giving back to their community, whether it's international or local. And so, yeah, I would say mission is actually more important to me. I've had sales jobs where I could make basically unlimited cash as long as I'm on the phone or I'm going out and visiting people and selling stuff. But I wasn't ever really, it didn't mean anything to me. It was just money. It was a resource, which we want to make profit. I'm not denying that. But I have to have conquest, or I'm just like David. I'm going to be looking on the roof and I'm going to get into all sorts of trouble.
Yeah, it was interesting about that story. He said he was at home when it was the time the kings were at war.
Yeah.
And so instead of pursuing conquest and what he was supposed to be doing, he was at home, and because he wasn't doing what he was created to do, yeah, it led into a lot of temptation and a big mess. So it's so true. How do you think companies can use their culture as a competitive advantage? Because I'm a firm believer in that.
I mean, look at Chick-fil-A. I mean, that's a perfect example. You can use that as a competitive advantage because when we've all worked bad jobs, we've all worked jobs where the culture was absolutely horrible. And when you go in, it's like you get there and your whole energy sucked out of you because you're like, man, I'm a part of this mess, but I got to pay my bills, so I'm here. So if you build a lively culture, something that's just great for your employees, you're going to have good retention. You're going to keep them. They're going to talk about your company. They're going to say, hey, my company did this for me, which also is going to return in your business. It's going to return in more construction. In my business, it's going to be return into more cigar buyers. And so you have a good culture. Your employees become your sales agents, even when they're not your sales agent. And so like you build a great culture, you build a great business because of how you treat your employees. And if you don't love your employees, everybody knows. There's a gentleman in our town who does some of that work. And when employees come in here, they do often, and they just talk so bad about their job. And I'm like, I'm never hiring that guy. And so when you have cultures like that, what ends up happening is the word of mouth actually destroys your business. And it's a trickle effect. It's not, next week it's going to happen, but it's just a slow trickle. And then when people realize you have good culture and you have stability and you have love for one another, people are like, I want to be a part of that business and I want to do business with that business. And so that's the great thing of having a good culture.
For sure. Yeah, we talk about it often, but the customer experience will never be greater than the employee experience. So it's so important, I think, for guys listening to the show or ladies, that we're leading an organization to value, and affirm and take care of the people that are on your team, because that's setting the bar for the experience that your customers are going to have, which is a circle that keeps everybody working. So, what advice would you have for the next generation of leaders on building a business and nurturing culture?
Man, building a business is fun. I would say get after it. I would say go fail, and then you'll succeed. If you never quit, that's the big thing. Like you're going to fail time and time again. But if you never quit, you'll eventually succeed. I know that's probably some old Stoics said that. But the pursuit of conquest, I'm going to use that term, is a great pursuit. And so like if you set your goal of like, I want to be able to build my wife a farmhouse and I want to be able to give my daughter a pony by 4. I mean, that's something that's in my head, and that's something that I'm doing currently. And so it's like, have a vision, have a goal. In the Proverbs, it says where there's no vision, the people perish. And I mean, that's a true statement. It's like, if you don't have vision, you're going to perish. You're going to come under some sort of depression or some sort of something, and it's going to just weigh you down. And so I would say have conquest, have vision. And if you don't have a mentor or somebody that you can talk to, an older generation, go find one. They're out there. I have sat under some great men who have looked at me and said, this is how you organize a store. This is how you make product placement look good. This is how you market. This is how you are intentional in your marketing. This is how you target market. This is how you build your business. And if I wasn't willing to listen to them because I thought I knew everything, and there was a time in my life where I thought I knew everything, and if I wouldn't listen to them, I would have never grown in business. And the other thing too is this: if you're starting a business, sometimes you don't have to do it alone. Have a brother, have a close friend, somebody you extremely trust, not just some random Joe Blow, because business partners are like marriage. If you have a bad one, you're going to end up getting a divorce, and it's going to cost your company everything. And so find a good business partner and lock in with them. Eat ramen while you build. And when you build for 10 years, you're going to eat steak after those 10 years because you've built something great. And so it's a time thing too. You can't just have $1 million in your bank account tomorrow because you started a cigar company. It takes 3 years to even get on your feet from what I've learned. But I mean, I would encourage you, just do it, get out there and start something. And if you need help, reach out to me. I'll help you. I have access to literally every product on the market except for drugs. We don't sell those.
What do you think is one thing about your business ventures or your journey to success that you didn't expect?
I didn't expect all the people who message me or text me or call me and ask for advice. That was big for me. I didn't really think I had much to offer. When you grow up in a fatherless home in the way I did, you think very little of yourself. And so a lot of time, this has actually taught me to take advantage of what God has given me, the talents, instead of burying them, to actually use them. And so I would say all the people I've reached out, being able to help them start businesses, or at least show them how to do a pitch deck, and walk into, hey, this guy has a lot of money. He's my friend, and I want to give him, here's how you do a pitch deck, So I would say those are some ways.
We land this today. What's one piece of advice you'd like to leave with the listeners on how they could start making a positive impact on their organizational culture?
Well, if you're in a toxic environment, the best way to do it is just be the salt and light. Be truthful, but be loving. And then just go to work and do your best. If you're starting out, have faith. We have a term we use. It's called Geronimo Amen. It's our prayer. You just jump out of the plane, you say Geronimo Amen. So that can be your prayer.
It's pretty good.
To the ones that are further on in business, when you've gotten to a point of being in comfort, I would say to seek to be out of comfort in some areas, because when you become comfortable, what ends up happening is you let your guard down and a lot of things slip. So those are 3 little advice that my young self can give.
Yeah, no, it's good. How does Chance want to be remembered when his life's over here on the earth?
I've thought about this a lot. About Guinness Brewery. So he signed a 1,000-year lease because he wanted his family to have that property for 1,000 years and be able to take care of his family generationally. I want to be known for that I generationally loved my family by building generational wealth. But first and foremost, I want people to know me because I love Christ, and that they see that in me and that they've heard it from me. And so the ending of my life, I hope I finish well, like Paul says, not in some kind of scandal. I hope God preserves me. And so I would just say that I would finish well, finish strong, finish truthful.
It's good stuff. Appreciate you being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been a real pleasure just listening to you from your just your experience. I think where you came from adds so much to your story. Too many people have excuses on where they're at because of where they started, when where you start really does not have to have a permanent bearing on where you end up. And you didn't use that as an excuse. You just made progress and you worked hard. And man, that's the picture of the American dream, and it's still alive. And
it is.
It's pretty cool. Enjoyed hearing you share it.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
Guys, remember, your culture is only healthy as the leader. We'll see you next time on the Culture-neer podcast.
Terry Gwaltney from the Culture-neer podcast. Listen, I want to say thank you for listening to the podcast today. Also want to encourage you to help us get the message out to more people. If you could like, share, and review this content on wherever you consume it, if you go into YouTube or LinkedIn or just whatever your social media channels are, and you could even share it, that would be a big help to us here at the Culture-neer podcast. Also, if you'd like some more information, you can go to www.terrygwaltney.com, where we have updates. We also have more resources. We share articles there. And you also can find our new book there called The Culture-neer. Again, we want to thank you again for taking time just to listen to the podcast or view it on YouTube. It's our goal to spend 20 or 30 minutes each time we're together to help grow your culture to a point where your employees refuse to leave and your customers can't resist. This is Terry. We'll talk to you soon.